Hey, everyone. I'm so excited for this next conversation focused on the intersection between talent acquisition, upskilling, career pathing, workforce management, all those things and how they play together. A conversation that's been happening all day and one that finally gets its own space to breathe here. So it is my honor to introduce the wonderful and famous Matt Alder, the host of the Recruiting Future podcast, an HR tech top 100 influencer, and generally wonderful human being. I will let him take the panel over from here. Everyone, enjoy the conversation.
I don't know how to follow that after an introduction. I think after that introduction, I think probably the best thing to do is to introduce the two panelists that we've got today. So, Ian and Leslie, could you introduce yourselves and tell us what you do?
Sure, I'll go first. My name is Leslie Vander. I'm the Vice President of People at Keller Williams Realty. I've been with the company for about 16 years. So I started when I was like 10 years old. I'm just kidding. But I've really enjoyed my time with the organization, strong culture, and I'm super excited to be here to talk with you guys.
And Ian Rosenberg here. I am an analyst with the Global HR Operations Group at PepsiCo, where my role is to review the service delivery arms available to our employees, HR managers, and I spent my first 4 years of my career here at PepsiCo within the talent acquisition group, working on a lot of the processes and systems that our recruiters and candidates and hiring managers, HR business partners alike would interact with. So really excited to be a part of this conversation.
Fantastic. And I'm really excited to be hosting this conversation. I think it is an incredibly important topic, and it's one that's really come to the fore with the events of the crazy year that we're having, basically. So we're going to be talking for about half an hour. We've got some topics and things that we're going to work through. If anyone wants to ask questions, please type them in the box, and I will try and read them while I'm talking, or however this works to make sure we can answer those as well. So to kick off with a question for both of you. So the unemployment crisis that we're going through globally, it's forced a lot of organizations to look more holistically at their entire candidate to employee journey. How have the last 6 months changed things from your perspective? Leslie, do you want to answer first?
Sure. Well, I think just like every other organization, very first thing we did was obviously we went remote, right? And that was a big change for us from an organizational standpoint. We were very much a company that felt like we needed to be in the office collaborating. We run relatively lean, and so that cross-departmental collaboration is super important. But in addition to that, so we went remote, and that was a huge deal. And it was a very relatively simple transition, like a lot of other organizations experienced. And I think what we really focused on was we've got to figure out what it is that we need to do. We need to jump in where the organizational needs are. There was a lot of uncertainty, especially in the real estate industry. You know, we anticipated that we would have no real estate transactions for months, right? Which would really, really hurt our organization. And we had to protect our finances so we could essentially protect our people. It was our number one priority, was to not lay any of our employees, any of our people off. And so what ended up happening with that was we essentially looked across the organization and said, okay, how do we need to take the skills that currently exist in the organization and then redistribute those based on what the needs of the organization are? And what ended up happening, because again, we are a relatively lean organization with a lot of crossover from a skill standpoint. There are people who are able to kind of jump in into different roles within the organization. And I think the other thing that is huge about, and I don't ever want to say a pandemic is an opportunity, but there was an opportunity in the fact that anytime an organization experiences stress, just like humans, right? When humans experience stress, we kind of revert back to our natural state of behavior, right? And similarly, we believe that when an organization gets into a stressful place, you kind of revert back to what the organization's intrinsic culture is. And the way that certain people will show up, you will see individuals step up and show, how big of a star they are and how they're able to contribute and how much more they're able to give. And you have other people inside of the organization that maybe don't step up and are not contributing at the same level. And so in this time of this pandemic and this time of organizational stress, there was a lot of opportunity for some of the individuals inside of our organization that did step up to get bigger opportunities because of the way that we were stretched as an organization, because we froze our hiring process. That was a huge thing and a huge opportunity for our people. That's kind of what we had to do, is kind of look back internally, reprioritize our objectives, and then reassign and rethink what our workforce looked like.
And Ian, how did that affect your business?
Yeah, so I'll take a slightly different approach. I think Leslie did a great job talking about ways that organizations are handling employees in their existing state. But from a acquisition perspective, talking about an organization like PepsiCo that doesn't operate quite as lean, or has quite frankly just a very different scope of work and employee relations and size, it was important to shore up the processes that were part of our onboarding, that focused on retention and driving individuals forward. Because like I said, in a company like PepsiCo, with the scope and the work that's going on, there is, even in a pandemic, consistent hiring that is occurring, even at a lower level, especially out in our corporate offices. But in the front lines, things are still moving and things are still humming along. So to ensure that our acquisition is strong, focusing on the onboarding processes. So from the corporate perspective, making sure that our digital experience, our remote experience, was really, really sound and strong from the get. And then again, from in the front line and out in the field, just continuing to deliver on that positive experience, so that when we are hiring during these strenuous and stressful times, and individuals are not confident in leaving, maybe they're a passive hire, they're not confident in leaving the role, the great company that they have, and we need to make sure that we're really laying out the best, most exciting picture and experience most positively from the beginning for them. So I'd say that from our perspective, the most significant changes have really come within shoring up that onboarding experience, continuing to focus on attraction, engagement, retention, and increased focus on the campus program, hiring out of colleges, universities, undergraduate, graduate, because even as this pandemic continues, there will be the time afterwards, and just continuing to stay on top of that talent has been a major focus.
Now, there are so many follow-up questions I want to ask both of you. Thank you for those really comprehensive answers. And I already sense that we're not going to have enough time to dig into absolutely everything. So, sticking to the kind of the main topic, one of the things that we're talking about is career pathways. How do your organizations think about career pathways in the recruiting process? How does that journey start? And please pick who goes first.
I'll jump in on this one, if that's all right, Leslie. But I would say that it is at the forefront of the processes. So we have, obviously different levels of employees, as all organizations do, and the way in which these career pathing conversations are had are different based on, if you're coming in at an entry level, if you're coming in as a senior executive. So, but the important takeaway is that it is a key part of those conversations, regardless of where you're coming in. It's just a matter of what the future growth and what the pathway looks like. So it's something where we have a great set of employee stories, employee profiles that exist available to the public on our PepsiCoJobs.com. Little plug there, but no, the great stories of employees' journeys throughout the organization. I could, in a situation where I'm the hiring manager or I'm the HR business partner, I would make it very important to share my own journey, give the story to the individual that I have that is available from different people within different functions. And I mean, we talk about it at Pepsi as your career really is what you make of it. There are no two pathways that look alike. So to lay out a rigid pathway for someone we don't find to be advantageous. We like to lay out as many different pathways as we've seen legitimately come out of that position, that seat, and tailor those stories that we, push to the front based on what their interests are. So, if I'm talking to somebody who's entering the organization, I'll use myself as an example, like someone's interested in talent acquisition, but has a secondary interest in the global HR operations space. We would lay out an instance in which somebody came into the organization within the talent space. How did they gain experience, skills, network to move on into different pathways? Or maybe it's something more not rigid, but we have our rotational programs for our sales new hires coming out of college. So really just trying to cater the conversation around what those next potentialities are to the interests of the individual that you're speaking to.
Yeah, so at Keller Williams, as part of our hiring process, and this is a part of the process that kind of spans across the entire organization nationally, is we have a pretty extensive interview process, and so we do behavioral assessments, and then we go into kind of a longer, what we call a life journey, and then the one of the last pieces of our interview process is called the motivational interview. And it's really where we kind of get the person that we're interviewing to kind of uncover where they want to be in 5 years. And so we ask 4 quadrants. Usually one is around their job and what they want their job to look like and what that experience should be for them. We ask them about money and monetarily, where do we want to be? So our organization, because it's in real estate, there's a lot of investment opportunities and that sort of thing. So we want to get a good picture of where they want to be monetarily. And then we allow them to kind of choose the other 2 paths, whether it's community service or family or other areas that they want to develop. And part of this process is kind of a multifaceted process, right? Number one, what you're trying to uncover is where and how somebody's future vision for their life and in 5 years mirrors and maps the trajectory of your company. And so because we have a lot of franchise locations, we have real estate agent offices and businesses, that vision that somebody might have for themselves might be completely out of alignment with where you're looking to go. So that's one piece. The other piece of it is a lot of times people aren't having these conversations. So it is a little bit of a grab in that candidate experience kind of attaches the person to the interviewer or the hiring manager. And we always want that candidate experience to be fruitful for the person who's interviewing, because we are in the real estate industry and we always want to have clients if the hire doesn't work. And then the flip side of it is to really understand the intrinsic motivators for why somebody wants this particular career path or why somebody wants the monetary. Because what ends up happening is as you kind of drill down psychologically with someone and you're asking them the questions of, why is making this dollar amount so important to you? What is it that you're wanting to accomplish? How would having that do something for you? Explain that to me. When you get down to that intrinsic motivator, it's going to mirror, it almost always mirrors every single quadrant. And you get to that one statement or that one phrase where you can continuously motivate whoever that person is, right? Whether it's, it's really important. Success is really important to me because my mother struggled her entire life and I want to be able to provide for her, right? And so then it's the true motivator for somebody, or the reason why somebody wants these things is because they want to be able to provide for their mother. So when you connect the path that they see for their life to whatever the intrinsic motivator is, it becomes a much more powerful tool to motivate somebody in their career. And so that's a huge part of our hiring process.
I think that, again, they're both really interesting answers. And, it's really coming across that, you work for very different types of companies. And I think we're getting a kind of a really sort of broad picture, around these topics in different industries and companies of different sizes. There's a intersectionality between career pathing and upskilling, and also addressing some of the communities that have been most impacted by this crisis, particularly early job seekers and underrepresented minorities. How does this come together in your organizations? What have you been doing to tie diversity, equity, and inclusion into your broader efforts? And Leslie, you just spoke for ages, so Ian, maybe you want to take that one while Leslie just gives her voice a little rest.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a strong history of focusing internally on our diversity, not only from a diversity of backgrounds and diversity of representation, but just diversity ideas, diversity of education, diversity of just in the broadest sense, right? But what we've done more of a focus on in recent years, and heightened most recently by the call outs that you made, Matt, is really drive in further within the campus space and our the connection between our campus space and our diversity and engagement arms. So we have a great group of employee resource groups available to our internal employees that serve various purposes, from networking to helping in upskilling to helping in finding those pathways that individuals have trouble locating on their own within organizations for advancement or for, like I said, networking. But the connection between those groups and the acquisition efforts as well as the retention efforts has not been quite as solidified as it should have been until recently. And so arming the teams that go into our campuses, that go into our diverse campuses, most specifically with the representatives from some of those groups, and they're able to come onto campus, speak to what the groups are focusing on from a within PepsiCo perspective, from a locally, socially, whatever the cohort or focus of the employee resource group is. They're really able to tell that story as a powerful, well, this is where we have a considerable focus as individuals within an organization, but also with the support of our organization. And so I think that joint effort between the day-to-day current diversity and engagement arms of a company like PepsiCo and the day-to-day boots on the ground recruitment efforts is something that is going to enable us to stay on the forefront of addressing any sort of issues that are tied to pandemic groups not being supported by the government, by their companies in the ways that they should be. So,
yeah,
cool, thank you.
Yeah, so Keller Williams is a little bit different in that we've always had a very strong culture, and I think because of the strong culture, we haven't been super purposeful about our DE&I initiatives. And when all of the social unrest happened with George Floyd, our chairman CEO came out and basically said, we're going to be anti-racist. We're no longer just going to be not racist, right? And he made this stance, and which is really amazing. And so our organization went fast and furious into putting together multiple task forces. So we have a national task force, which we call the Social Equity Task Force. That's about 65 individuals across our entire ecosystem that are working to put together plans and processes in place to support our DE&I initiatives. And then we also have a mobilized internal task force that it kind of started mobilizing before the situation with George Floyd, and now now obviously a lot more energy and support and resources have gone to that. I think one of the things that is really kind of amazing about the real estate industry is it is really truly an amazing place for individuals who are looking for a career change, right? It's like one of the few industries where you can literally go from I just finished real estate school to creating or netting $1 million in a business in just 5 years. And we have, proven systems and models and pathways for that. So one of the sub task force committees that are inside of both in our social equity task force and in our corporate headquarters task force is building a fellowship program that is providing support for individuals who are looking for a career pivot. So this fellowship program will be partnering with some HBCUs and that sort of thing. And it's not up and running just yet. So hopefully, in a couple of months, we'll have some success stories around this. But again, to engage our local communities in getting into real estate, and then supporting them in that first 90 days while they get their business up and running. And that's a huge thing. So again, our training, our systems and tools around supporting real estate agents in getting business up and running happens really, really fast. And so this is a huge opportunity for us to be able to reach out and hopefully, as an organization, not just handle kind of the DE&I initiatives internally, but also to look at how do we, as a massive real estate organization, start to address the wage gap and start to address wealth and start to address things that the real estate industry has some control over. So that's kind of where we're putting a lot of our emphasis on. And the thing that's so amazing about this is these are our task force members that are mobilizing all of this. This isn't a head of diversity that's kind of telling everybody what to do. It is truly a ground up movement, and it's been really inspirational to see. And I will say, just two other things really quickly is we have adjusted our values to add equity as part of our value statement, and we haven't changed our value statement as an organization in 30 years. So it was a big move, and that was a movement that happened by our equity task force members. And then in addition to that, we created a new subcommittee that would exist in every single one of our franchises, solely focused on DE&I. So we're really proud of the work they've been doing.
Fantastic stuff from both organizations. I just want to pick up on something you said there and just dig in a little deeper if we can. So you talked about career pivots. Now we're in this kind of unprecedented scenario where whole industries have shut down. There are millions of job seekers out there who are having to think about pivoting their careers and using their skills and experience in different ways. I mean, you obviously talked about how your organization has been thinking about that, and I'll come back and ask you a kind of a follow-up question about that in a second. But Ian, is that something that your organization's kind of looking at in terms of the different types of talent pools that are out there at the moment? Are you thinking about talent and skills in a different way from before?
Yeah, so we in recent years have looked really into the assessment space more closely and have really integrated what we consider to be a really strong assessment for our senior leaders and executives, and for the rest of our population, incorporating different sets of questions that are drilling down on specific skill sets that align with the broader function, not just the specific role, but the broader skills and knowledge base that is required to be successful in the long term within a specific function.
Fantastic. And Leslie, to come back to your previous answer, obviously, fellowships to bring, people to help them with a career pivot and bring them into your industry. What challenges do you sort of face as an industry in terms of perhaps the ingrained way people think about skills and experience? I mean, do you envisage any challenges with that? And what are you doing to overcome them if they're there?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like everything, when you kind of take an entire industry and kind of flip it on its side and say we got to talk about everything differently, there's going to be some longer term pivots, and then there's also going to be some shorter term quick fixes. And I think some of the longer term pivots are things like, just awareness around some of the challenges of the real estate industry as a whole. I'll give you an example. One of the big things that we talk about in the real estate industry as an effective way to get business is to door knock, especially when you have an open house, right? If there's an open house in the neighborhood, you want to knock on the doors of the neighbors and say, come to this open house. Well, that gets challenged if you're a 6'5" Black man. And as an organization, we were teaching these systems and models around how to have a really effective business. And then there are some areas in the industry that were just, just completely obliviously unaware. And so I think that, again, as we look at how do we go into, and the flip side of that is, we also talk about a sphere of influence, and how do you engage the people that are in your network to engage other people to go purchase a home. If you're in a lower income community, there are not going to be a lot of individuals that are looking to purchase a home, right? And so there are some things that we are going to have to change as an organization in order to support something like a fellowship program. I think the other area that we've always kind of talked about as an organization is just transferable skills, right? How do we look at the necessity for each of the jobs that we have inside of our ecosystem, because they are they're all kind of similar, right? Whether it's, admin, operations, technology support, training, and then obviously sales and real estate. What type of industries can we look into, or what other type of skills might somebody have, whether it's customer service, whether they're working in the food and service industry, whether they're in insurance and insurance sales, whether they're, selling Cutco knives, right? How do we look at other industries and show somebody what the opportunity is inside of real estate? And so that's another area that we've kind of always taught our people to think about, new opportunities and new roles, and engaging themselves into the real estate industry. It's a little bit more challenging at our corporate headquarters, because our engineers have to have certain skills, and and we work on upskilling those guys, but just a little bit different.
And you've you've anticipated the next question there brilliantly. I've got one more question that I want to ask, but I noticed that there's a great question in the chat from Kate about upskilling, and upskilling is something that we haven't necessarily talked about so far. So the question is, upskilling is costly in terms of training. Considering organizations are becoming conservative on spending amid the pandemic, how do your organizations move forward with upskilling your employees? So, who wants to take that one?
I can jump in again. So the great thing about this question is I'm actually excited to answer from a personal perspective as a member of an organization that's placed a strong focus on employees furthering their own skills and developing their own knowledge bases. I have almost completed my MBA from the University of Maryland through our tuition reimbursement program here at PepsiCo, which is a program that has been made clear is not going away. Due to the pandemic. It's one that is actually we're really holding on to tightly because of the benefits that the organization sees in a return on investment by continuously investing in their own employees' improvement. And then further, we've historically had a strong internal we call it PepsiCo University, where there's essentially different colleges of courses and skills trainings for our different global functions. And it recently got a bit of an overhaul with the implementation of a tool by the name of Degreed, in which you really are able to guide your own learning pathways through different organizational setups for, if you are more interested in one area or another within a specific function, it kind of guides you along all of these different available pathways. So it's a really great tool that connects what the organization is thinking from a pathway perspective with what an individual is looking for in an upskilling perspective.
Yeah, so we leverage the tuition reimbursement program as well, and that's a huge thing for us. Keller Williams has also recently partnered with a lot of large tech giants, and so we kind of leverage those resources and partnerships with other firms that we have close relationships with to help us from a skill development standpoint, especially since our organization is moving a lot more into data, AI, machine learning, that sort of thing. So from a technological standpoint, that's kind of where we are. And then from a larger scale organizational standpoint, we build playbooks, resources for a lot of the standard roles inside of our organization, so that so that we also have clear pathways when somebody is looking to get into a particular role. They know exactly what those metrics of success are, and then what are the leadership opportunities, or what are the pathways that you have to a multitude of different things. And so I'll give you an example. One of the big opportunities inside of our organization is to become a coach, where you essentially coach real estate agents on, having an effective business. And we have clear maps around what that looks like and what they would need to do to attend and what training they would need to have. And so we try to map that out for all of our roles inside of our ecosystem. So again, large global Keller Williams, there's a lot of different paths that you can take, whether it's leading a franchise and running like the financial operations of multiple franchise locations, whether it is becoming, the head of a region, whether that is getting engaged with our coaching division. There's a lot of different paths that you can go by. So we try to map all of those things out and make it really, really clear on what they need to do. And we provide all of that education, all of those resources inside of our ecosystem and our leadership academy.
Fantastic stuff. Now, we've literally got a couple of minutes left, and I wanted to bring in kind of my own example and see if I've got time to turn it into a quick question. So as I said at the start, I run a podcast called the Recruiting Future podcast. Earlier in the year, episode 242, I spoke to the head of workforce effectiveness for Tata Consulting Services in India. And they had the most amazing case study about how they're upskilling communities all over the world in terms of giving them digital skills. So it kind of manifested itself in a couple of ways. Firstly, they were kind of allowing all students to apply to become part of their community. And then once they're in that community, they were giving them peer-to-peer mentoring and skills development. And they were recruiting from that community, but also the people who didn't get a job there were getting value from that as well. And then secondly, they've been doing a lot of work with schools to upskill teachers all over the world with the right kind of digital skills for the sort of the future of work and that kind of stuff. And I just think it's such a great example. And in the 1 minute that we've got left, maybe 30 seconds each, do you think that is the role of employers in the future, to actually kind of reach out to communities beyond the talent that works for them and provide skills and support? So 20 seconds each. Tell me what you think.
I would say absolutely yes, and especially with the opportunity that we have around social injustice and the opportunity that we have to really truly impact communities. This is absolutely the future. I agree.
100% agreed as well. And I'd say that if anyone is curious to know what PepsiCo has already done from this perspective and what we will continue to do and what our plans are, please check out our sustainability reports and the work that we've done investing in various communities around the world, specifically with a focus on education for women and girls.
Fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Leslie. Thank you so much, Ian. That's been really enlightening and a great conversation. And thanks to Wade and Wendy for having us.